Well, good morning, everyone. It's so wonderful to have everyone here. I'd like to start off very quickly just by introducing myself, introducing Nick Rixon, talking through the agenda and having a good look and see at what lies ahead in a very, very exciting economy, even though a very uncertain economy. My name is Pavlo Phitidis. I am one of the co-founders of Auric Business. We are a growth service specifically focused on SMEs, having worked with 2,700 SMEs across 4 continents at this point in time, and having done so through a number of crises, learning how to identify opportunities in them, and specifically learning how to make up for lost revenues as a result of them. Joining me is Nick Rixon, a colleague and probably one of the leading coaches, in my view, within the United Kingdom, business coaches. He's also worked across the United States, Australia, and in Europe too. Morning, Nick, how are you doing?
Yep, fabulous. Thank you, Pavlo. Good to be here this morning. Looking forward to today.
Fantastic. Nick, we're going to make this all about engagement. You and I have very, very feisty engagements, good engagements. I'm really hoping to get engagement from our visitors and attendees. In order to do that, the best way to do it is really through the chat function. By now, we're all very familiar with where the chat function is, how the chat function operates. Please do send through questions on that chat function. And I have no doubt that between Nick and I, as enthusiastic as we may get around talking problems in business, and more specifically how you can solve them, we will attend to all the questions themselves. We are looking to run this over a 45-minute period. We're going to make it pacey and racy. We want to get to everyone's issues and questions and challenges and opportunities that are raised. But we'll start off first by talking about the context, because we have to. We live in a very unusual time at the moment, and there's an enormous amount of uncertainty in the market that is opening up tremendous change opportunities, so suited to SME and especially entrepreneurially driven business owners. I would like to share an analogy with you, because I've often found if you can separate yourself from your business and take a step back in order to get perspective, a good analogy can be enormously powerful. We will then tackle 6 growth problems that we have certainly seen over the years, and then move on to questions over that period. So the best way to start is, I see some messages coming through. The sound seems to be okay. Is everyone happy? Is everyone happy? A good thumbs up would really indicate that. If you can hear clearly, if you know where the chat function is, if you're struggling with anything, please do send it through on a chat, and my colleague Pippa will attend to it for you.
Can I make a quick comment? Just a quick logistics for everybody. I'm sure everybody is familiar, but it's nice to do this just in case. If you select view options at the top of your screen, in the drop down, put side by side. What that allows you to do then is slide. You should get a slider between the speakers and the participants. And if you then pick, instead of speaker view, you pick gallery view, then you can still see everybody. If you just want to see the speaker, then pick speaker view. But you should then be able to slide your screen backwards and forwards so that you can reduce the presentation down and see a bit more of the people, or expand it and see a bit more of the presentation. So side by side and gallery view, and you should be able to see what I'm seeing at the moment, which is lots of smiling faces, some no faces, and the presentation as well. If you're on your phone, that makes it very small. I'm sorry about that. I'd stick with speaker view if you're on your phone.
It does. It's you know what, Nick, it's amazing what Zoom has actually done in the last 6 months or so. It's improved tremendously. I really think that they are making a good go at trying to keep the leadership position they have. There are lots of early stage challenges. I don't know if you've seen some of the new platforms come through. But I think this manner of engagement, I still prefer the physical engagement myself, Nick, where we sit with an audience, with people. You can see people, you can engage with people. There's some warmth in the room. You can share a coffee during, after the event itself. But I think that Zoom's improved quite a bit, and we have to simply get good at it. So I would really like to see your engagement come through on the chat line. Nick will be looking out for it. I'll be looking out for it. This is your event, and we really want to deliver value to you. You've invested the time. You need to walk out with value. With that, I'm going to get into the very, very first question. And the very first question is a challenge to everyone. And the challenge is, what do you believe you need to do in your business to double your growth in the next, let's say, 3 to 5 years? If you could take a minute and think about it, write it down, send it through in a chat if you're comfortable with it. But think about, what do you need to do to double your business in this environment in the next, let's say, 36 to 60 months? Nick, you've seen cycles come and go, haven't you?
Yeah, thank you, Pav. That just means I'm ancient. Yeah, so looking at the group, I'm probably one of the older people not the oldest, yeah, probably the oldest actually looking at the group. I don't know who's hiding down there in the no cameras. I've been through 4 recessions. I've started 2 businesses in 2 recessions, and I got fascinated by cycles. If anybody that's been to any of the work I've done over the years knows I pull up a special economic clock. So if you have a moment, if you Google economic clock at any point, go looking for one by an Australian accounting business called Count, which I thought was particularly original. And it basically is a clock face, and it talks about the economic cycle. I usually have one on my office wall because it just reminds me where we are in the economic cycle. And basically the 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock is the bust market, and the 6 o'clock to 12 o'clock is the boom. And what we've seen over the years, again, for anybody that's worked with me, you know this, is 14 years of flat period in the markets, 18 years of growth, 14 years of flat, 18 years of growth. It repeats over and over and over again. And what that gives a lot of business owners is the confidence to understand what's happening in the world isn't just happening to them, it isn't just happening in the UK. I can do this with any market chart over the last 100 years, demonstrate to you 14 years of flat, 18 years of up. And it's worth getting the economic clock, stick it on your wall. We're currently quarter to midnight, so we're 9 o'clock on the clock. If you have a look at what that means, it tells you what's going on in the economy. We are in a growth period. We are 7 years into an 18-year run. Might not feel like that at the moment with COVID, but we are. So worth going and look at that. And the one thing that I saw a lovely piece by Simon Sinek the other day, who literally said, you know, this is not unprecedented. We've had plenty of things that have smashed industries and smashed the world across whole industries before, industries that have disappeared. You know, in this country, you just got to think of things like coal mining, the industries that have just completely disappeared. So this COVID thing, whilst it's a different style, is not unprecedented in our economic issue. Certainly, it's the biggest drop in a quarter ever, but it's not unprecedented, and it will recover. It will go away, and we will all still have businesses the other side of it. So it's just not in one of the big cycles.
I firmly believe that, Nick, and we've seen it time and time again. I'd be interested to hear from anyone who doesn't believe they could double their business in the next 36 to 60 months. Whilst you're still thinking about it, whilst you're sending some messages through, some very interesting views have come forward. Doubling my growth, possible. What do I need to overcome? It's about staff, about finding the right people to do the right thing at the right time. From Guy, maximize current revenue from existing customers and gain new business. Interesting in a competitive environment. Linda, great one. Right people in the right place. I would add, at the right time and at the right cost. And there's some really interesting stats on the challenges around people dynamics in businesses. I've always been fascinated to see more and more people are gaining access, in effect, to education, either free education off the internet. There's extensive information around and about. Universities are attempting to expand. Technicons are improving. Everything's improving, so-called improving in the educational sector. And yet universally, people say finding the right talent, finding the right skills remains a big, big challenge. Interacting with current and potential customers on a regular basis. From Andrew, I couldn't agree more with you, Andrew, especially in a crisis. Very nice ideas. doubling your growth. I'm going to ask you one more set of questions. To double your growth, now that you have a view, what are the biggest challenges? Some of them have already come through, but are there any other challenges out there that you certainly see? Nick, we see the same challenges appear again and again and again. And what's so frustrating is that they are all solvable. Well, it's not frustrating, it's actually fantastic, but they are all solvable. The types of things we see are, for example, certainly the people issue, finding the right people to do the right thing at the right time. One of the most common ones is finding, winning, holding, securing new clients and new customers in a very noisy, overcrowded marketplace. A third one is, well, extensively, it's one of the reasons that we established Auric as a growth service, is the ability to realize your value. And it's a stat I'll share with you later, but it's worth mentioning now. You know, Nick, we ran some very interesting numbers using IRS data out of the States especially. And, you know, I use the States as a good example because certainly when I was there 12 years ago, it was a very, very vibrant environment, flush with capital, flush with opportunity, a lot of activity in the market. I worked with some seriously smart people. And yet the data showed me that 94.6% of businesses started there to sell. And I'm not talking about businesses that were 5 years old, 6, 7, 8 years old. I'm talking about the businesses that were approaching 20, 30 years of being in the game. They weren't able to exit. In your experience, what are the challenges you've seen typically that impede growth, Nick?
Well, I'm not sure we've got time to go through the whole lot. You know, the challenges that we see over and over and over again, repeated, wrong mix of people in the wrong position, wrong mix of skill sets being applied to the wrong business areas. You know, I could take 45 minutes just to go through the issues. Biggest challenges I get as a cross section is the belief that people have in themselves and their market. They start buying into this market news all the time that what a bad world we're in. You know, it's all gone to hell in a handcart. It's terrible. You know, they're so varied and so different. But typically, getting CEOs out of their business and onto their business is one of the big ones. Right people, right place. Finding the right people has been a #1 issue. People keep telling me finding the right people, getting culture right. You know, I could go for hours, unfortunately. But there's
maybe one day we should co-author a book on it. It would be a tome bigger than anything that's been written before, because it's the same thing again and again and again. And I often wonder what the real reason is because of it. You know, people who run businesses have certainly had the courage to start, the creativity to do it differently, because you have to do things differently if you want to stand out, and the care to sustain it. And in many ways, Nick, it was that aspect that got us thinking from an Auric point of view, how is it that these problems persist and remain? And I'm going to share what we certainly have seen to be the 6 biggest growth problems. There's some lovely ones coming through. Tasman, really great one, transforming delivery through technology. I could not agree with you more. In fact, historically, if you look at it, and you can date it back to 3,000, 4,000 years, honestly, there's some wonderful, wonderful books that talk about crises and what emerges as a result of crises. And every single crisis that comes and goes, because they do go, sees technology tick up. The technology might have been mechanization a couple of thousand years ago, but increasingly we've seen extensively since 2008, a massive deep investment in technology. And I think that the COVID crisis is going to result in the same thing. So very interesting comment there. Mark, standing out positioning. So how do you stand out? How do you compete in a noisy, crowded environment? We're going to share some good insight onto that. Relevancy from Rob, relevancy of offering with good timing in terms of client engagements. It's been really interesting to watch, Rob. You know, the businesses that never managed to move from a transaction mindset into a relation mindset during the closed down period of COVID, I think have truly, truly struggled. Those that managed to move into relationship engagements, yeah, they got major, major insights, and we've seen that extensively. So we'll certainly discuss that and go through it. I want to start with the analogy. And the analogy I love to share because it's so relevant. Firstly, I've had personal experience in ships. I spent 3 years in the Marine Navy, and it was fantastic from that point of view. But there's a massive similarity between sailing a ship and building a business. In the first instance, all ships sail in the open sea. We all exist in the same economy. Yes, we have different ships, but the economy is the same. The bumpiness, the uncertainty, the apprehension, the opportunities, the upticks, what Nick was referring to about understanding where we are in terms of the economic clock, we all face the same economy. When you sail a ship, it's really important to depart with a purpose. You're leaving the safety of a harbor, you're sailing into the wide open ocean, you need to have purpose behind your sailing effort. And that is typically to arrive at a destination. A lot of people who start businesses start with deep passion, and passion is important because it fuels the progress of that business. But at the same time, if you don't do it with purpose, saying, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing, as the captain of a ship, you land up out at sea. The design of the hull, this particular ship is an interesting ship. This ship retrieves anchors lost at sea. The design of its hull is very specific to give it stability in order to yank the anchor out from deep in the seabed. But every ship has a hull designed for a purpose. You might be carrying containers, you might be carrying people, it might be for pleasure, it might be for fishing, it could be many, many reasons. The right hull design really matters. Every ship has an engine room, and the engine room is found below decks, below the plinth line, in fact, the water line of the ship. It's dark and it's dingy, and the diesel engines churn to give propulsion to the ship. Every ship has a crew, and the crew doing the right thing at the right time is absolutely critical, especially in a storm. And then finally, you have the bridge up at the top. And it's a wonderful place to be. When I eventually was taken out of the engine room in that dark, dingy environment and put up onto the bridge, I had a 360-degree view around me. I had a dashboard full of instruments, forecasting weather patterns, allowing me to navigate effectively. And there was an espresso machine. It was fantastic. And finally, the purpose of sailing has to be to arrive safely at your destination. So I'm going to use this analogy and pull it through the problems that we're going to tackle, look at getting sorted, and understand how to get to the other side of them. Context, first one, all of us operate in an open sea. The open ocean is rough for everyone right now. Nick, I got this quote from you in a recent discussion that we had. Historically, markets recover 60% of their value within 6 months of the slump. Are you seeing it already? Are you seeing the early signs of it? And what does it mean for us as SMEs?
Yeah, so look, again, we use the markets basically because I grew up in the last 20 years working with a fund manager who was particularly good at spotting market cycles. And one of the things that we spotted during the recession, we went back through various V recessions, the 74 W recession, the latest W recession, and the market drops usually a very certain amount. It bounces a certain amount almost immediately. So whatever it dropped, if it dropped 60%, it recovers 60% of that drop in the first 6 months of the rise. And what most people do is they miss the opportunity if they're invested in the market. How's that relevant to us as an SME business owner? Because our advice was still put all of your money into your business. You have more chance of doubling your value in your business than you do in the markets or your house, unless you are brave enough to go in at the bottom and you know what you're doing. So all we use the markets for is a 6 to 12 month precursor, a pre-indicator of what's going to happen in the economy. So typically when the markets drop, the economy drops 12 months later. When the markets rise, the economy rises 12 months later. So all I get business owners to do is to watch the economic clock, watch the markets. There's your good indicator that the market's coming back. And we're already seeing prices in certain stocks in certain areas already starting to rise. We're certainly well above. If you just Google, Yahoo and look at March to today and see what the rise has been already, there's what's happened. So the bottom was March. The bottom in the previous W, by the way, was a March. It bounced on the 9th of March in the last W in 09. So, we're seeing the same thing now, which is good news for first quarter next year.
Very good news.
The economy should be taken off.
Yeah, but Nick, it's only good news if you have not gone into hibernation during this period. That's the thing. And there was a lovely analogy. Again, it's a sailing analogy, and I can't remember where I read it, but it has been so true in terms of what I've seen over the last 100 days. There were a lot of folks who decided, this is wild out there. We are going to remain in the safety of the harbor. And in effect, they went into hibernation. And there were a few folks out there who turned around and said, okay, look, furlough is available. We'll furlough part of our team. But mostly what we're going to look to do is that the crisis that we're facing is going to change consumer and customer behavior. And for that reason, we're going to sail into the storm, test the hull, see how to improve it, test our crew, see how to improve it, so that as the economy opens up and as things begin to normalize, which they always do after a crisis, we will be ahead of the pack. And that growth mindset, I think, has been one of the key differentiators between businesses we're working with that have not grown over this period and those that have got the early stages already of growth, well before the market itself has picked up. That growth cycle combined with the right mindset, I think is absolutely the biggest opportunity available to SMEs. Big corporates don't have that benefit to their advantage at all. They're simply too big and wieldy to make those changes come about. So we are all sailing in the same ocean. And as Tasman said to me over here in one of the comments, yes, we're sailing in the same boat. We're all in this together. Perhaps we may be in the same ocean, but we are in different boats. Absolutely, Tasman. Every single business I've ever worked with and seen across Auric has been unique in its own right. Unique in terms of the business owner's mindset, unique in terms of how the business was built, and unique given the circumstances and resources available to that business. So the next thing is, we're sailing in the same ocean without a doubt. We're all in our own boats, but we need to set a destination. And it's funny, I think on average, you spend about 40 to 50,000 hours building your business, growing your business, doing business, generating activity and income. And then you might spend, on average, maybe at most 30, 40, 50 hours in exiting the business. And that exit is often poorly achieved. 94.6% of businesses fail to sell, they close. In family succession, 28% of businesses succeed in succeeding the business from the founders to the successors. 28%, that's in the first year. In the second year, 5.4%. And these numbers are global. And I've often wondered why. We firmly believe, from an Auric point of view, the only destination you should sail to is something we refer to as an asset of value. There's a big difference between building a business to generate income, absolutely crucial. Without the income, you don't earn your economy, you don't earn a living, you're unable to pay people, pay staff, and generate activity. But an asset destination is slightly different. If you think about it, referring to what Nick was saying to regarding the markets, you buy a share. You buy a share for, let's say, £50 or $50. You hold on to the share and choose to sell it 3 years later. Hopefully, you can sell it for $100. That $50 gain is the capital value. It's capital growth in the business, and it's reflected in equity. You also hope that over the 3-year period, that share generates dividends for you. That's your income growth. And the third and the most important feature for all of us as business owners is that that share is not tradable, it's not sellable. And there are only 2 destinations for every business. It either is a sale or an exit. So it's really important in our view that all businesses get built into an asset of value. It's got a couple of features to it. The first is, and answering some of your questions already over here, brand positioning. What distinguishes you in the market and sets you apart? It needs to be built on a system of delivery. We'll tackle that shortly. You need to have a good team. You need time to focus on growth. And all of those features together demonstrate the fact that you have created an asset, and it's highly likely you'll be able to sell it in a clean deal. So let's tackle the first one. Brand positioning. What does it mean? It's really about responding to a competitive, noisy business environment. And going back to your question, Mark, that you sent through in the chat, how do you distinguish your business and how do you set it apart in that competitive space? Nick, I got a stat yesterday, 12.1 million .co.uk websites. That's excluding the .com websites altogether. How do you see brand positioning? How do you test it?
One of the things, just the fun things we used to do when we were checking people's positioning is just have a bit of fun with some obvious well-positioned things like, can everybody think of the tallest mountain in the world? Thumbs up if you all know the tallest mountain in the world. Keep your thumbs up. So who wouldn't put their thumb up no matter what I say?
Let me get my geography book, Nick.
Second tallest mountain. Third tallest mountain. There you go. Longest river. We know the longest river. Next longest river. Third longest river. Okay, try this one. First girlfriend. Second girlfriend, boyfriend if you're a girl, or girlfriend if you're a girl or a boy. no judgment either way. Third, fourth, fifth. Point being that most people, fastest man in the world. Who was the second? If you're a big athletic fan, you might know. Who was the third? Again, most people don't know. Once you're past the top three in almost anything, they almost say nobody bothers to search second page in Google. So positioning is almost always about being the number one, number two, and number three. The big four is the big four because nobody can get back to five. Nobody remembers who's the fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th biggest supermarket. Top three is about it.
Yeah, it's so true. And you know what, Nick? It's not a function of advertising budget either. Whenever I look at these big, let's call it events or awards, you see these award ceremonies. I see them in the United Kingdom, in the US. I see them across Europe. I see them in South Africa too. And you've got the top 100 brands in the country for this year. Whenever you look at them, they're all corporate, with corporate budgets. In the SME world, we have to play the game differently. And in the SME world, what we see succeed consistently is when an SME decides that it's not going to try and be everything to everyone. It's going to narrow down its audience, understand who it serves, deepens its knowledge of who it serves, and positions itself not in terms of the fantastic features of its product or a promise on price or the service levels that it promises to offer, but rather it says, I know who my audience is that I serve. I understand the problem I solve for them. I can articulate and quantify the problem. And importantly, I know what experience my customers want from me in having that problem solved. The moment you get that languaging right, and you get the definition around that right, within the noisy, crowded space of SMEs, we see it consistently. Those businesses that position their brand within that audience on that basis find immediate resonance. There's some wonderful stats that have come out, especially over the last 7-8 years. And Tasman, I'm going to get to your question here on social media, extensive social media, because it's become a narrower and noisier space. I look at myself just in everyday life. I only see and hear the things that resonate with me in relation to the issues I want solved in my life. Within our business, within our clients' businesses, only the things that can advance the business and solve the problems in the business that impede growth are what people pay attention to. None of us spend money on anything that doesn't solve a problem. So brand positioning within the SME world has to be delivered and designed very differently from what we've seen to certainly that in the corporate world. Once we've got our brand positioning right and we understand who we serve, the next big issue we often come across as two growth impediments, Nick, are finding, winning, holding customers. And then when you do get new customers on board, fulfilling your promises to them without creating chaos, what we refer to as work in the engine room. And I saw a fantastic stat over here about a month ago. SME business owners invest about 25% more time per week in simply maintaining their businesses, in the working in their businesses piece, compared to employees and corporate entities. How do you see that chaos piece, Nick?
What we normally find, if you look at the 4 areas in the delivery team, is a bit like the football analogy that I use every time. You've got to have the right number of players on the field. They've got to be in the right positions. They've got to have the right skill sets, and they've got to be doing it brilliantly. What we typically see is a team of 9 on the field. We've got 5 goalies and 3 strikers. Nobody's particularly good at what they're doing, and nobody has any idea of what the end goal or the game is. So I've never found anybody sorry, that would be unfair. I've probably found less than 10% of businesses have got the right number of players on the field, in the right positions, doing the right activity with the right skill set.
Yeah, it's
the biggest thing. We can normally find anywhere between 5 and 35% improvement in efficiency by just running that process and getting rid of the chaos, getting the CEO out of the engine room, in your analogy, in my world.
So Nick, what we have found mostly is that it all starts with that positioning. If you get your positioning right and you understand who you serve and what problem you solve for them, because of the issue of finding, winning, holding customers, it's an expensive business in its own right. And because that once you do get that right, you want to maintain your growth momentum, you need to make sure that your operational delivery is equally consistent to prevent you from having to come back into the engine room to now fulfill the obligations you have to the clients that you constantly are winning. We've taken a view very specifically that the best way to get this right is to build business systems, activities in a sequence that can be measured, that generate the leads, because now you understand who you serve and what will resonate with them, activities in a sequence that can be measured to convert the leads. In other words, once customers or potential customers respond, what is the sales journey you would take them through? And upon them agreeing to transact with your organization, how do you then deliver and fulfill your obligations? Again, through activities in a sequence that can be measured. What's critical in every instance is that they are teachable. Because if you get the system of delivery right to match your positioning, it then offers you the next stage of real opportunity. And that is going back to what you mentioned earlier about finding, holding, and building the right team. What we've often found is that this whole process of recruitment is incredibly vague and very opaque. And very few organizations globally get it right. Yet if you had a change in mindset that says, well, I'm looking to get the right team on board, the first question I would ask is, okay, who do you serve and what problem do you solve for them? If I can articulate that, my next question would be, well, how do you do it? And if you can demonstrate that you're building out a set of systems to deliver that proposition for you, then the opportunity arises by saying, in terms of lead generation teams, I now know how my lead generation system works, and I'm looking for people to operate that system for me. It makes the process of sourcing and recruitment far more adept. In terms of fulfillment teams, in my engine room itself, the delivery aspects of my work that I do, if I understand the systems, activities in a sequence that can be measured, I now know how to find the right talent to operate that delivery system. There was a great stat that came out here. 39% of SMEs struggle to find the right talent. I'm not surprised. And there's a massive skills deficit experiencing and now being widened within the UK itself. It's not only there, we're seeing it in the US, we're seeing it in South Africa, and we're seeing it in Europe too. There's a great story, Nick. A couple of years ago, a really dynamic, fast-growing tech business that we worked with. This business owner came to us. He was doing about 1.8 million pounds of revenue. He was dynamic. He had found a new opportunity using technology to craft value for clients. It was fairly complicated. It was an emerging market opportunity in the mobile space. And he bemoaned the fate and fact that he had hired 3 very highly regarded sales professionals within a period of 2 years, and he was unable to hold on to any of them. And yet when we looked at what the issue was, it's because they came on board and they were simply expected to do what they needed to do. They weren't given an operating system to work against, to understand the positioning. And I think that that is one of the crucial elements, that if you can get it right, it offers you time, the most precious commodity available to us all. Time to build culture, and importantly, time to grow. These are the stats, Nick, that I got. You quoted some stats on the number of employees around turnover. I found these stats quite recently on a piece of work that was done in February this year in the UK. People who employ 0 employees are generating around £6,000 of profit annually. On average, 6 employees increased it to about £15,000 of profit annually. And businesses running between 10 and 49 employees were averaging at £56,000 of profit per person annually. Surely, if you're not growing your profitability, Nick, well then what are you doing?
Well, the other problem with those stats, Pav, is that 96% of businesses in the Western world, last time I looked, which was late last year, we did the stats, never break 9 staff and never break $1 million revenue. So they never get into that profitability. So literally 96%, never break the 0 to 9 staff bracket. If you look at how many businesses sit in that bracket when you do your research, or $1 million in revenue.
And I'm going to take a bet with you that probably some of the most significant hurdles relate to positioning, relate to a system of delivery, and relate to the ability to hold and find and motivate the right team.
Absolutely.
There we go. Let's say we get all of this right, and we do get this all right on a consistent basis. It comes to the final point, the final destination. It's about realizing your value. If you're investing the 40,000 hours or 50,000 hours or 30,000 hours in building your business, most business owners we've certainly worked with from an Auric perspective, Nick, have invested everything they have back into the business. And a personal story, I experienced this in my family. In fact, it's one of the motivating reasons behind Auric. My father had worked for 43 years in his own business. He did well. He generated income, eventually paid off the home, bought a few holidays for his kids, educated us. We were very fortunate and lucky from that perspective. And at the age of 72, 73, he realized that what he had was not sellable, even though it had earned him good income to date. And this issue of not exiting with a capital gain, to my mind, it is beyond frustrating. We spend years and years and years crafting and building and working at our businesses. And we do what we do well. We provide our service well. We provide a product well. But the eventual product we ought to be building as business owners has to be that of a saleable asset. And because 94.6% of businesses started fail to sell, they close based on global stats. This has to be front of mind when you depart the harbor in your journey of building a business. This is the final destination. You need to get it right. And Nick, it was this, more than anything else, that led us to establish Auric through having started, built, and sold 12 businesses, where we understood that if you build the business in a structured, organized fashion, once you've understood why the business needs to exist in relation to problems that you solve for your audience, it creates it into a sellable asset. It's put us in a position on the back of those 12 where we have now subsequently worked with over 2,700 SMEs, Nick, across 4 different continents, with a consistent, persistent view that we need to start with the end in mind and create that sellable asset. It is what generates the wealth for the next generation in any family and looks after the rewards for the sacrifices you've made. What is your understanding, Nick, of this aspect, specifically around the sale, the clean sale of a business?
Well, we've been running, you know, why I came to see you guys in the first place. What excited me when I first saw the Auric offering was that I think we've been helping businesses grow, get funding and exit. And more people are looking at the exit strategy now than ever before. And less of them are realizing. I have 5 clients right now that I'm working with that are all looking to sell in the next 24 to 36 months. 3 of them I think are unsellable. 2 of them we'll hopefully get a decent price for. But that, along with the inability to grow, if I just take the grow and the exit part, one of the things that was always missing for me was this systems and processes that allow people to grow past that 9 number. Your business does that better than any other I've ever seen, which is why I was excited about bringing it over to the UK. And what I also know is that if we build those systems of delivery so that they're running without the CEO having to be there, that makes a sellable asset that is much easier for me to take to market and sell. So, you know, that was what excited me when I first saw it, was this ability to create systems and processes inside businesses where people didn't necessarily have the skill set to do that themselves. That was by far and away the biggest reason that I wanted Auric in the UK.
Yeah, it's interesting, you know, Nick, the 12 businesses that we started, built and sold, 2 failed, but the remaining 10 sold very successfully, thankfully.
Yeah.
We got asked the same questions again and again and again. 2 of them through IPOs, 3 of them through management buyouts, and the rest were all corporate buyouts. And we got asked the same questions. What makes you special? That's about positioning. If you are not there, will the business continue to operate without you? That's about the system of delivery. It's about the team. Will the business yield future increase in income growth? And that's about growing a business to be profitable, not growing a business to generate high turnover without the increase in profitability. That absolutely is impossible unless you have time on the bridge. So I couldn't agree more with you. I spoke to extensive business brokers over the years. Most business brokers, individuals who specialize in selling businesses, have upwards of 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 12, 15,000 businesses on their books. And they say to me in the quiet corridors or over the coffee meeting in a more relaxed environment, Pavlo, honestly, if 0.5% of those businesses are sellable, I'll be lucky. It's a global problem. It's a global issue. But Nick, I've got one more question on this to you. Why is it? Why is it? Why is it so hard to build a business? Why does it become such an issue to build a business? I mean, we get taught this at university, don't we? We get taught this in books that we read, don't we?
No. I work with a lot of professional services, most of whom spend anywhere between 5 and 7 years to learn their craft. If you're a doctor or a vet or an architect or a lawyer, and what they'll tell me is if they were lucky, they had half a day on how to build a practice. And you know, the management team rules say you can manage 5 people plus or minus 2. So the 18-hour day entrepreneur might squeeze themselves up to managing 7 or 8, and then they start to run out of capability to manage. They were never taught how to do it in the first place, which is why they get stuck at 0 to 9 staff. So no, we're not taught how to do that. I spend all my time trying to teach business owners how to run businesses. I don't ever teach them about their product skills because they're brilliant at product. But a lot of them get stuck. They get stuck at various points. You know, 2 partners will build a business to 15, 20 staff and then get stuck. So there's all sorts of reasons why they get stuck. But that systems and processes that other people can follow is the bit that stops most of them.
You know what's so interesting about that is a number of our clients turn around and said to us, but hang on, Pavlo, I'm a CA, I'm a chartered accountant, I really understand business. I say, no. At university, I was certainly taught in accounting to be a numbers technician. Or if you are a lawyer, a contracting technician.
Yeah.
Or if you're an engineer, a builder of bridges or builder of digital products or whatever the case might be. We are never taught how to lay one brick on top of the next, because building a business is quintessentially artisanal.
Yep.
And it's for that reason we created a very specific process of engagement, Nick. From an Auric perspective, when we engage, the first thing we do, always with the client, is say, can we get on with each other? It is a very intimate process of engagement. If I work with a business owner who knows everything, I can offer no value at all. No value at all. Certainly from an Auric point of view, we understand how to wrap a business in its commercial packaging to make it work. We can't tell you how to operate your product or service. Those technical aspects and elements are quintessentially what every business owner is brilliant at. So the chemistry match really matters. The next thing we do when evaluating a business is we ask ourselves the question, in doing what we do to work with that business, to build it into an asset of value, will we have an impact? In doing what we do, will we have an impact? And the reason that both these elements matter is because 70% of our fees are based on growth. The third thing we do when we meet with the business owner is we go through a try before you buy experience. What I've often found is that, especially when you're communicating growth services, gaps do emerge. All of us have biases. We hear what we want to hear, we see what we want to see. So we go through a small period where we engage with every client, we get a good sense of how that client thinks, what they're looking to achieve. We dig down deep into the gold mindset of that client. What are the circumstances? What are the challenges? Because this leads me on to my final point. I am yet to see a business owner that is the same as any other business owner, or a business in its own right that is the same as any other business in its own right. Unless you customize a growth plan for a business, I think you yield very, very poor outcomes. And then finally, what we do, the investment that we look to achieve from every client we work with is that of time and that obviously of fees. Our fees are 75% based on the growth in that business. It's for that reason, Nick, that we don't take on a business where we don't believe we have a good chemistry match, and importantly, we don't believe we can deliver impact. And it's for that reason that we don't take on a business against which we can't customize a growth plan. To end off very briefly, how do we do it? How do we work with you? We run diagnostics in order to see what's there, what's not. We turn everything into data, be it your strategy, be it your numbers, but most importantly, all the business systems. 207 activities make up the business systems. From there, we set the growth plan. From there, we then focus on building scale before we accelerate growth. The reason being, if you accelerate growth before you have fulfillment and operational delivery, as you grow, you'll be pulled back into the engine room. And most importantly, once we have got these 4 elements in play and you have time to focus on next level growth, that's where we drive the value. With that, I am 4 minutes over time, I believe, and I'd like to end off with a couple of questions, should there be any, if there are any. Please certainly put them through in the chat line. Nick, any last thoughts from your side?
Yeah, look, I thought it was a couple of things that excited me from a coach's perspective when I first met your engagement process, when you actually sit down with clients to work out whether you can help. The fact that you turned away 1 in 3 blew my mind. As if I was selling this product and sending them to you for you to look at, that would horrify me. But as a coach, you know, the ability to only work with people who we know we can impact was fantastic. The fact that you got 28% growth in a 0 GDP growth market blew my mind, because I thought, you know, I think I'm pretty good. And in a lot of the clients, we were getting good growth, but we weren't getting anywhere near the stats. And the third thing that blew my mind was the way you analyze a business with the statistics, that tool for the business owner themselves, never mind for you to keep track of what's going on, but that nine dial dashboard that tells the business owner everything about what's going on in their business. I'd never seen that before. I built 1 or 2 customized, but I'd never seen it that systemized. Those 3 things for me were what excited me about what you guys do. If I'd had you in my businesses 30 years ago, you know, that would have been a different story, because I definitely didn't sell all 12. That's for sure. I had to shut a number down because they just weren't sellable. Good income, but not sellable. You know, I hadn't built assets I could sell. So
you know, one of the most fascinating aspects of being in the Merchant Marine Navy for a short period of time is it's well and good sailing out there in the open ocean when you can see the land and peg yourself. But when you lose sight of that land, how do you navigate to that destination? And literally, the dashboard that we've built, which is customized around each and every business, acts as that navigation tool. What's been especially interesting in the dashboard that emerges over time is when that business does come to exit, the process of debating and negotiating the valuation of the business between the buyer and the seller, the dashboard corroborates all the evidence to support the premium negotiations that we managed to extract.
So, Pavlo, got an interesting, sorry to interrupt, quick question from Mark Steinoff. I just need to make sure that I got it right. Can you assist with finances to generate growth? Are you talking about funding, Mark, or is that what you mean by finances? I don't know whether Mark's still with us. Mark, can see you in the top right-hand corner of my screen. Do you want to just switch your mic off and just tell me rather than type? Oh, yeah, funding. So the answer is yes, we do get businesses ready for funding. I've raised a number of funds for clients over the years. Part of the process, one of the things I loved about Pav's model was one of the dashboards, there's a fundability dial that comes up. When you hit 61, score of 61, it says your business is now ready for funding. But if it's funding pre-growth, then that's a slightly different conversation. We need to sit down and talk to you about where your business is. But I have raised money for startups. I've raised money for growth funding. There's a number of ways to do that. So happy to chat with you about that, or chat to whoever invited you to this. But yes, and Pav also runs his own fund at the moment. We are talking about building a fund of funds with one of the top 5 fund managers in the world. Or access to top 5 fund managers in the world, about funding a global fund that would then fund each country's fund. So yes, we are talking about funding businesses, but we only fund clients, just to be clear. We are not a funding house. We fund clients that we've been working with for 6 months, so we know the management team, we know the process, we know the product, we know the market, we know them well. So our due diligence is done in the process of helping you build your business. So you don't then have to go through a big long due diligence process to get the funding, if that makes sense. But if you want to talk to us about that, by all means, you know, grab whoever invited you and pull them to one side and chat with them about that.
Fantastic. Look, thanks for that contribution. Everyone, thank you so much for attending. It's been an absolute pleasure. I will look through the group chat. I will see and make sure that we have answered all the questions put forward. For those of you whose questions we didn't cover, I'll be sure to respond, or my team will be sure to respond as we engage further with you.
And one other quick point, both myself and Pavlo have time to sit down and talk with any one individual. So if you had a series of complex questions you wanted to ask, both of us have set time aside to just chat with people individually. Most of the time, you would come to an event like this off the back of a one-to-one with somebody like either myself or Pav or Ben. So if you've got complex or more complex issues that you want to chat through, no cost obligation on that. We're more than happy to help and assist. Zoom has given us both a lot more time availability than we would have had charging around on trains and planes and cars, etc. So we've got, I get 3 hours extra a day, not having to schlep into London every day. So yeah, please reach out if you want to sit down and chat with us. We are more than happy to chat you through what we think you should be doing with your business and whether we think we can help. And zero obligation and zero cost for that.
Absolutely right. Nick, you're a star. Thank you so much for giving up time to be with us as well.
Yeah.
And to all of you, have a wonderful day further. Think about how to double your business. Think about the growth impediments you need to overcome to get there. And as Nick said, very happy to have an engagement, discuss, debate a few ideas, and see if we can be of any value to you at all.
Yep, cool. Thanks, Pav. Thanks, everybody. Good to see some familiar faces and some new ones there. Take care. Have a fabulous day and a great weekend.